A big hello to all my colleagues at McKendree University. This is Chris Cavalinas, and I will be presenting Chapter 7 from our Terry textbook, Clinical Research for the Doctor of Nursing Practice, 3rd edition. Chapter 7 is titled Designing a Clinically Based Qualitative Capstone Research Project. There are 3 types of designs a researcher could use when designing their research study. This includes quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method study designs. Quantitative design was discussed in Chapter 6, and the mixed method design will be discussed in Chapter 8. The focus of this presentation will be to gain a better understanding of the qualitative design as discussed in Chapter 7. Qualitative research looks to understand the lived experience of the participant, which helps to better paint a picture of the participant's experience. This presenter has outlined 5 objectives to be reached by the end of this presentation. First, the audience will gain a basic understanding of the qualitative design, highlighting the advantages and disadvantages. Second, the major differences between qualitative and quantitative design will be discussed. Third, the audience will be able to explain the difference between ethnography, phenomenology, grounded theory, life history, and ethnomethodology. Fourth, there will be discussion related to motivational interviewing and how it supplements qualitative research. Finally, there will be discussion on the aspects of research that must be understood in order to choose an appropriate qualitative research design. In order to better understand qualitative research, this presenter will build on what has been learned about quantitative research by comparing and contrasting the two. First, the goals of the research must be considered. Qualitative research is based on the principles of phenomenology and is used when the researcher is most interested in the process being implemented and how the process has affected the participant and their perception of reality. Conversely, quantitative design is concerned with the actual scientific outcomes achieved, as in the principles of positivism, which look for cause and effect. Qualitative research is conducted in the field or on-site at the participant's location. The findings will be conducted through observations. The data is regularly kept using field notes that are free-flowing reports of the subjects, their activities, the setting, and may include sketches and maps. Important qualitative information can be obtained from analysis of official records, standard reports, newspaper articles, letters, and diaries. Secondly, the method of research used to obtain the outcome is important. Qualitative research comes from a desire for inductive research. This means the researcher is looking to generate new hypotheses due to the data obtained from the participants. On the other hand, quantitative research is looking to test a hypothesis in a deductive manner. Next, this presenter will look at the body of knowledge. In qualitative research, the knowledge is within the participant. The researcher looks to find out what can be learned from the participant to move the research forward. Quantitative research looks at the already created body of knowledge to create and test a hypothesis. The concepts are an important part of the research process. For the qualitative researcher, their interest lies in learning the concepts that participants use to classify their experience, how they define these concepts, and what information was used to create their definitions. For the quantitative researcher, the focus on the concept is how it can be tested and measured. Next, it is significant to look at the explanations of the data. Qualitative researchers look to find out what folk theories may be influencing the participants and where that folklore originated, whereas the quantitative researcher looks to scientific theory to explain the data. Finally, the interpretations and implications of the data become a relevant aspect to review. The translation of cultural knowledge from the participant into an applicable cultural description is crucial for the qualitative researcher. Both qualitative and quantitative researchers share a desire to show how the information is relevant to nursing, the stakeholders, and how it can be significant on a global level. In order for the researcher to decide if a qualitative research design is best for the project, there should be a consideration of the advantages and disadvantages. There are several advantages to the qualitative research design. First, the information is subjective. The data is unique to the individual and is obtained in a non-judgmental way. The nature of this design connects the phenomenon to the perceptions from the participants to give a realistic description of the environment and intervention as it pertains to the participant. This design allows for flexibility and an ability to adjust for obstacles and alter the direction to create a new research question when needed. Finally, qualitative research can produce more comprehensive information because of the use of subjective information in conjunction with observations of the participants. There are some disadvantages to qualitative research that the researcher must consider when selecting a study design. While the subjectivity of the information is an advantage, it is also a disadvantage because emotions and perceptions are difficult to quantify and translate into measurable data. There is a lack of logical reasoning and statistical analysis needed in a scientific field, such as healthcare. Therefore, this deficiency may make the validity and credibility of the findings questionable. The researcher may become emotionally involved as the participants share their experience and express vulnerability. Direct involvement with the participants makes it difficult to prevent researcher-induced bias. This direct involvement with the participants may also trigger greater scrutiny from the Institutional Review Board, or IRB, to ensure the participants do not feel their privacy is being invaded. Finally, the ever-evolving nature of the research questions may make it difficult to know when to complete the data collection. This fact could lead to overextending the sampling procedure and inappropriate expansion of the research boundaries. Another consideration for the qualitative researcher are the challenges experienced when delving into sensitive topics. This type of research requires the researcher to realize they are entering the life of the participant. They must give discretion and respect to the participant for sharing extremely personal information. In order to be able to make the participant comfortable and willing to share their information, the researcher must be able to build a rapport during the first encounter with the participant. The researcher may feel vulnerable both emotionally and physically. They may feel a need to self-disclose to help build that rapport with the participant and assist them in feeling comfortable with disclosure, or they may feel they need to reciprocate because of the information received. The researcher may feel a sense of guilt because of collecting such sensitive information. Also, the researcher could become desensitized and distant from their own emotions because of the traumatic stories they are hearing. Finally, the researcher may feel physically vulnerable because of the setting and not feeling safe where they are obtaining the information. Now that discussions have outlined the advantages and disadvantages to the qualitative research, as well as the differences compared with quantitative research, this presenter will turn the attention of the viewer to the different types of qualitative research design. These are ethnography, phenomenology, grounded theory, life history, and ethnomethodology. While not a research design, motivational interviewing will be discussed due to its relevance to qualitative design. The first research design to discuss is ethnography. This design is dedicated to learning about the many variations of culture from the people that are living that culture every day. Findings are obtained through immersion into their world via fieldwork. The term culture can be defined as ethnicity, but also as a society, community, or an organization. Participants can be obtained through chain sampling, which is the act of asking participants to identify other potential participants. There are two perspectives to ethnographic research. Emic perspective is committed to learning how the participants view their own world, and etic perspective is concerned with learning how non-members perceive the behaviors of the members within the culture. Phenomenology is the next research design to review. This research design is interested in chronicling the lived experience of the participant and does this through in-depth interviews. Participants will not only have their own unique experiences and perceptions, but will also have shared experiences with others that have a similar lived experience. This common experience is known as universal essence. The researcher interprets the interviews to group the information into meaningful themes. There are two perspectives to phenomenologic research. The first is descriptive phenomenology, where the researcher obtains the information without preconceived ideas. This is known as bracketing and is used to maintain researcher objectivity. As part of this process, the researcher will usually choose to forego a detailed literature search before beginning the study. The second perspective is interpretive phenomenology. Interpretive phenomenology states the researcher cannot eliminate preconceptions and uses this information to interpret the experience of the participants. This perspective further believes the conditions the participants encounter every day shape and limit their choices. The interpretive approach to data collection allows for the use of conceptual framework and theory to help focus the sampling, participants, and research questions. If a framework is created, the research must be diligent to show how the framework was used to interpret data and generate findings, but must also demonstrate the framework did not bias the participants' narratives. Grounded theory is the next research design to consider. This theory looks to identify the guiding principles that rationalize a specific social situation through the collection of data and the subsequent development of an explanatory theory. The researcher will look at all data that provides insight into the social situation and uses the constant comparative method by analyzing data simultaneously with the collection of new data in search for a core variable that will create the foundation for the grounded theory. There are 5 attributes to a core variable. The core variable recurs on a frequent basis, links various data, has greater implications for the development of formal theory, develops detail in the research, and includes people from various backgrounds. When interpreting data within the context of grounded theory, the researcher will review the data line by line and tease out categories. This process is known as coding. Data collection, analysis, and categorization is conducted until the point of data saturation, where no new data is found. Additionally, data reduction occurs as the relevant data is put into the categories and the irrelevant data is discarded. Life history is the next research design up for evaluation. For this design, the researcher will strive to observe and understand the lives of the participants as their lives change over the course of time. In this design, the participants are collaborative partners in the research. The researcher's aim is to understand how past relationships and events shape current experiences, as well as how the participants infuse meaning into their life. Context is created as the research is implemented and is critical to successfully interpret how the participant views an event or experience in their life. For the life history design, an interview guide that lists the questions to ask as well as a life history grid to help organize and summarize the written record can be instrumental in obtaining IRB approval, as the IRB tries to ensure the researcher will ask all participants similar questions. The final type of qualitative research design is ethnomethodology. This design is concentrated on how members of a societal group perceive, define, and classify the performance of their daily activities, the meanings assigned to these activities, and how they create a hierarchical order so their cultural duties are understood and societal chaos is mitigated. There are 6 unique features of ethnomethodology that must be considered when contemplating this research design. It is assumed the routine activities are taken for granted. The knowledge used by the participants is common sense related to knowledge and procedures. The participants use typification to classify objects and experiences. Accounting is a collection of all activities that participants use to make sense of their world. Indexicality are the actions and verbal statements used to derive meaning from the context of the situation. Finally, reflexivity is the correlation between the description of how an event occurred and the actual circumstances of the event. There are some limitations to this research design. This design does not address external factors which may limit the participants' choices regarding actions and thoughts. Additionally, this design only looks to describe how practices are interpreted, so it is not possible to explain the cause of the participants' actions. Motivational interviewing can be an effective tool in the pursuit of qualitative research. The goal of motivational interviewing is to effect change in the participant through collaboration between the nurse and the participant by using open-ended questions, reflective listening, confirmation, summarization, and empathy. This technique assists the participants in understanding the need to change to enhance their mental and physical health and empowers the participant to gain control over self-destructive habits and become active in their own health promotion. There are 8 important items to consider when learning to use motivational interviewing. 1. Participants' autonomy should be respected. The healthcare professional should remain open and express a genuine interest in the participant's viewpoint and life experiences. 2. The atmosphere should be supportive to diminish the fear of expressing concerns about their ability to create lifestyle changes. 3. Be able to recognize language used by the participant that denotes commitment to creating and sustaining change. 4. Be able to reinforce the participant's change-oriented language to strengthen their commitment to change. 5. Tactfully respond to the participant's resistance to change while not reinforcing the resistance. 6. Recognize when the participant is ready to discuss a plan for change. 7. Have an ability to escalate and solidify the participant's commitment to change. And 8. Ensure the ability to blend motivational interviewing with other approaches to create continued success for the participant in developing healthy lifestyle choices and practices. When trying to decide on a qualitative research design, there are 9 key elements the researcher should know about the intent of their research. 1. They need to decide on a focus of the study. 2. Determine whether the overall goals of the research fit within the parameters of the qualitative research. 3. Decide where and from whom data will be collected. 4. Decide how the data will be collected. 5. Decide if there will be an instrument used in addition to the researcher as an instrument. 6. Decide on the detail and specificity of the research questions as well as how the information will be recorded. 7. How the data will be analyzed. 8. Decide on the logistics of the data collection. And finally, 9. Create a plan to address issues of reliability and validity. This presentation successfully reached its objectives. The presenter gave a general overview of the qualitative research design, specifying the advantages and disadvantages, as well as discussing some ways in which qualitative and quantitative research differs. Discussion was had regarding ethnography, phenomenology, grounded theory, life history, ethnomethodology, and motivational interviewing. Furthermore, the items needed to effectively decide on the best qualitative design were highlighted. So here we'll open the mic up for questions. Well, I would encourage you to reach out to me via email with any questions you have regarding Chapter 7. I would not recommend putting comments below because I'm not sure how I get notifications for that because this is new. But I do appreciate you taking the time to watch my presentation to learn more about qualitative research design. These are my references, which was the textbook. So thank you again for joining me on this journey.